Hey, welcome to Constitutional Chowder. And Gabby, she really wants to be part of this. She loves our Constitution. Yay! She says, oh, kitties are for the Constitution. That's right. Kitties rule. Come on, baby. Here we go. Hi. Welcome to Constitutional Chatter. I'm Miss Faith, and I am here to help you figure out what is happening in our country today, how it applies to us, our Constitution. Well, we have already gone through amendments 1 through 6 of our Bill of Rights. And if you would like to see those videos and you have not watched them yet, they're on my YouTube channel, Shadow W Witch, and I will try to get you that link on here. But today we're talking about amendments 7 through 10, and that finishes out our Bill of Rights, and then we will continue with the rest of the 17 that remain over the next couple of weeks. But the 7th Amendment. Oh, before I go on, I do need to say I'm not an attorney. And the cool thing about our Constitution is you don't have to be an attorney. The Constitution, by its very nature, is for every single American. Residents, any resident, it's an important word, any resident of the United States. Yeah, so you don't have to be a citizen for the Constitution to apply to you. That is a right as a human being. This is our fundamental rights, protections, and freedoms as human beings in this country. So, no, you do not have to be an attorney, but if you feel that your constitutional rights have been violated, seek out a good, competent attorney. It's important. So we've gone through the amendment, First Amendment, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th last week. We're 5th and 6th. Today, the 7th Amendment is really simple. You have the right to have a jury if you have a civil trial. Say it is not a criminal matter, but it's a civil matter. Sometimes people get sued for various things. Maybe you were brought to small claims court, or somebody sued you for damages. It could be anything. Did you know that you have the right to call for a jury trial? Most people end up going in front of a judge. Sometimes they're called magistrates, but one individual sitting there on the bench making decisions, which can be fine and good, but you might feel, depending on so many different reasons, that you would get a more fair trial by a jury of your peers. So yes, your 7th Amendment right is that you can call for a jury trial. So again, having an attorney that is, aware of all of this can help you in that matter. Then we go to the 8th Amendment. Very important. This is protection against cruel and unusual punishment. Again, one of the reasons I started studying the Constitution kind of, accidentally, was when I started studying the 17th century witch panics in North America. And in my many decades of doing so, I noticed a really strong connection to the rights that were just not in existence. With people that lived here in colonial America in the 1600s that were accused of witchcraft, and arrested, tortured. Torture was a big thing. and then tried and eventually executed. And this is what the 8th Amendment protects against: cruel and unusual punishment, torture. Back during the witch trials, consisted of many things. At one time in the upstairs classrooms here at Enchantments, I had like a museum display, because I used to be a docent in a museum, so I kind of like that, you know, whole thing, putting things on display. I actually had photograph or wall displays of pictures of different torture devices, and people, they couldn't handle it. We finally had to take it down, because just even the drawings, they were so long ago, from the 1500s and the 1600s, the 1400s, the 1300s. They were so bad, the concept of them, that even pen and ink drawings were too horrible to imagine. So human beings can be really awful. So we don't have that display up anymore. But, you know, our 8th Amendment protects us against cruel and unusual punishment. That you know, it changes over time, but, you know, today it's considered cruel and unusual not to give a, you know, prisoner food, water, or clothing, or things like that. So the Geneva Convention usually establishes what's cruel and unusual when it comes to wartime, things like that. Also protects against excessive bail and excessive fines. That's a bit splitting of hairs. I mean, if somebody is homeless, they commit a crime, and they put $1 million bail on them, yeah, of course it's excessive if they don't have $2 to their name. But then again, that's up for a competent attorney to argue. But hopefully we can't punish people the way Giles Corey was punished in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692, when he refused to plead one way or the other. He refused to plead guilty or innocent. He wouldn't say a word, and so they piled stones on him until he was crushed to death. That's the kind of stuff we had no rights against at that time, no protections against. That's the 8th Amendment: no cruel or unusual punishment. Now, not having television, things like that, I don't necessarily think that's cruel or unusual. This is like, you know, vicious, horrible, you know, painful, you know, punishment to the point of death and suffering and things like that. So then we get to the 9th and 10th Amendments, and those are really the crux of what we're talking about today. The 9th and 10th Amendments, I'm going to be reading a lot of this. I got it from the John Birch Society. Very awesome society, been around for a long time. And they really, this is a group of people that take our Constitution and rights of the American people really seriously. It's a group of people that really know their stuff. So I kind of went to the experts, and I'm reading a lot of this from them. So thank you, John Birch Society. The 9th Amendment, to read it quickly. The 9th and 10th Amendment, there are sovereignty amendments. They finished off our Bill of Rights. Of course, they're all ratified in 1791, the first 10. These are all rights not listed in the Constitution. All rights not listed in the Constitution belongs to the people, not the government. And the rights of the people are not limited to just those listed in the Constitution, such as the right to privacy, the right to humane treatment, the right to food, water, if you're in government control, like we were just talking to, if you're arrested or imprisoned, We had Roe versus Wade. This is why you got to be careful. This is a slippery slope. People made the mistake of thinking our Constitution is carved in stone. It's not. It's not at all. And I think you'll see that shortly. Our right to live, work, and believe as we choose. A lot of those things are not actually written into our Constitution. You know, people like to say, well, that's part of our Constitution, separation of church and state. That's nowhere in our Constitution. You do know that. Those are written in the Jefferson Papers. Thomas Jefferson wrote that that would be an ideal arrangement. It's not in our Constitution. All that we have in our Constitution that regards religion is the freedom of religion. Nowhere at all does it say. If you think we have separation of church and state, watch, you know, a meeting of Congress. They take 20 minutes just to say the prayer. I mean, it's ridiculous. They need to be getting to work, but they're there, you know, saying Christian prayers. I mean, I personally think if they want to do prayers, they need to say all 200 religions that are recognized in this country. But that's just me. Anyway, so our Constitution, the rights that are not listed in there, that belongs to the people. And as the John Birch Society says, nationalism is not federal government. And we have a federal government. And right now, there's a lot of talk about nationalism. Nationalism is a step away from a free government. You can be a patriot, you can love your country, be an American, which is great, but be careful about the word nationalism. An example is in 1933, the Nazi regime came from a democratic government, and they were developed into a nationalist, socialist Nazi party under Adolf Hitler. And with a national police force, which ruled over the individual as well as the individual states in Germany. And our founders, long before this, worried that we would become a nationalist government with universal power over the states. So at the end of the Bill of Rights, that was, 1791, that they're writing the first part of the Constitution. They said, we've got to be assured that this type of thing won't happen, what eventually happened in Nazi-occupied Germany. So they wrote the 9th and 10th Amendment to prevent this specifically from happening. So we had sovereign states, and they came together agreeing to unite into a federal government, a partnership, if you will, that would work together with the people, not a government that would rule everything. And the 9th Amendment reads, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. The Constitution was written to delineate the powers of the government and the responsibility of each branch, what each branch could do and what each branch could not do. So specifically, if anything was not written down as to what the government can do in the Constitution, then the government cannot do it. That includes the executive branch as well as the judicial and the legislative branches. Let me say that again. If, for instance, let's take the executive branch. If it does not say specifically in the Constitution that the executive branch can do exactly this specifically, then the executive branch cannot do it. I don't care how many executive orders somebody is signing their name to. It has literally no power. No legal power under our Constitution as our founding fathers wrote it. I'm not making this up. This is not an opinion. I am not a constitutional law attorney or scholar. This is how our government was constructed. Now, the 10th Amendment goes a little further into this because the two are kind of, they work with one another. And the 10th Amendment says the power's not delegated. I mean, they literally made two amendments to shore up one another in case one, I don't know, say we got a president that decided they wanted to go to the Supreme Court and say, let's just throw out this one amendment. They actually took two to shore each other up. The 10th Amendment says the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. In other words, if a specific power was not given to the federal government within the Constitution, then the federal government cannot do it. Those powers, whatever they may be, are with the people. The 10th Amendment can be used to stop the federal government from taking unto itself powers that are not delegated to it. State legislatures, using the 10th Amendment, can nullify something the federal government is trying to impose upon the people of the state or of each state government. There is a nullifying movement in the country formed to educate and impel state governments to stop the excesses of the federal government. And when enough states have done so, history has shown that the federal government has backed away from imposing unconstitutional edicts. So in other words, a state can pass a resolution calling for the nullification of an unconstitutional federal law or edict, and it can't be enforced in the states. One of the most famous is the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. And this is when they were basically going around saying, we need to, send people out to get these fugitive slaves. And all the northern states were like, yeah, no. They're safe here. They're human beings here. They're not slaves here. They're free men here, free women here. And we're not going to abide by your bullshit laws down south. We're just not. And there wasn't a damn thing they could do about it. So, now, one shocking assertion of a president of the United States that he has full power simply because he declares a state of emergency. Regardless of the reason, this is called an edict. This is not legislation nor permission by the people. Nixon did this. This goes directly against the 10th Amendment. And when Nixon did this, very few people protested. The few that did, very few took notice of it. Now, who should take notice of it? Our elected officials in Congress. People have gotten very comfortable with people running for election. Oh, well, we all know politicians lie. Really? We have an election every 2 years. Why are you good with people lying to you? I don't care what side you're on. Why are you good with it? You're even better with it if you don't bother to show up and vote. All right. Let your boss cheat you out of money and, leave your doors unlocked, let people just come in and rob you. If you're good with that. Making excuses for that, it's just, wow. Well, now a president can think that he has these powers simply by declaring that he has them. Lately, simply by signing a piece of paper, which according to our Constitution is worthless, and then handing out pens to those in attendance as souvenirs. Governors do this also. It happened during the COVID pandemic. Now, they assumed powers allowed, these assumed powers allowed them to rule as dictators over our states, whether you were for the forced closures of stores or not. And our Congress did nothing to stop this violation of our constitutional rights, in complete disregard of our right as a government of we the people. Now, everybody was closed down. If you were good with it, fine. If you weren't, legally you had the right not to be closed down. As far as our Constitution is concerned, having a quick vote as to whether or not we were with it, I mean, if they can do a television show with singers and, you know, everybody at home can vote, to say that it can't be done in the midst of an emergency, of course it can. Nobody either thought of it, nobody wanted to think of it, nobody bothered to reach out and ask. They do surveys all the time. Things could happen. Things could actually be done. We live in a world of technology. But nobody ever bothered to ask the people. Now, I personally, I closed my store because I wanted to be part of those not spreading a viral, violent, you know, deadly disease. But I would have appreciated having an opportunity to vote on the choice before being told everybody's shutting down. You don't have a choice. That went against our constitutional rights. So yes, even if an edict is for the better good, it is never to be allowed, not in a free country. And the media does nothing to point out this violation of our constitutional rights, nor do our schools. Much of our Bill of Rights has been dimmed and eroded. Not enough people stand up for their rights for 4 reasons, according to the John Birch Society, and they make a very good point. First, fundamental principles are no longer taught. Many of these rights have been distorted from their original intent. And they have been taught, people are being taught against taking a stance lest they're labeled an extremist. People are going to get mad at them. They're going to start a confrontation. People are going to get upset. Be upset. You should be upset. The Constitution is being destroyed in front of you. And 4, people do not understand. Lack of organization. Become involved. Our founders would be considered extremists today. One person standing up is called an extremist, but if everyone does it, we can't be ignored. Now, this constitutional chowder concludes the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. We have another 17 to go. And then after all 27, I'm going to swing around and talk about the Articles, which is our contract with the United States government, the federal, state, local, and their contract with us. Okay, this is our protections and freedoms. But when I started, I said for you to decide if you feel that our Constitution was being respected, followed, and abided by the government, who we elect to follow it. And the only way to restore our rights and freedoms is for enough people to understand our rights, stand up for them, and demand our elected leaders follow our Constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in our Constitution. Right now, we have a president that's asking, you know, regardless of how you feel about it, he's going up to SCOTUS and saying, you know what, throw out the 14th Amendment. Don't want it. The 14th Amendment we'll get to in another week or two is anyone born on American soil is an American regardless. No questions, no debate, no going to court, an American anyone born on American soil is an American. He doesn't like that. Let's throw it out. So let's play a game. If that happens, and his Supreme Court were to say, yeah, one, that would totally and irrevocably break our Constitution. The only way you can change an amendment is for 3/4 of the states to vote on it. Every single state has to take it up, and 3/4 of them have to vote on it. And each state has a percentage of people within each state that must vote on it. It is not that easy, and sometimes it takes years, if ever, to get passed. No one man, no one person, no one governor, legislator has the ability to just throw out an amendment. It's just not possible. If that were to happen, it would break our Constitution to the point that regardless of where you are politically, you'd have to consider the Constitution. And if you're like, you know what, I'm really supportive of this, that's great. All right, well, what happens when the other party takes over? And they will. It goes back and forth like a ping pong match, back and forth. What happens when the other party goes in? Precedent has been set. We no longer have to follow the 3/4 rule. So, okay, we just threw out that amendment. Well, it's all fair game, isn't it? Think they're not going to go after the second? You bet your ass they will. Once precedent is set, the Constitution is broken, there's nothing left. You might not like an amendment. Too damn bad. It's there for every single resident on this soil. And if you don't like it, keep voting. And keep voting. And keep voting. That's how women got the vote. Keep voting. That's how gay marriage became legal and needs to frickin' stay legal. That's how all men and women in this country became legal. We don't have slavery anymore. Hopefully we'll get past the civil rights thing if we can get rid of the racism and all that other bullshit one day that we're still fighting. I mean, we should be progressing, not going backwards. Our Constitution can't be broken. So yeah, you might not like certain parts of it, but you can't throw out a little bit of it without throwing it all out. And there's got to be something about it that means something to you. I don't care who you are. So that's why I'm going over this constitutional chowder. There's a lot in that bowl of stew, and there's got to be something in there that means something to you. So whether you like it or not, it has to be all held together. And if you don't like something, like we're going to talk about prohibition and then the amendment that repealed it and all of that, you can make changes. But it has to be with the majority of the people in this country getting behind it. And it has to be done according to the law. So, I hope you found this interesting. It was really fun talking with you. We're going to talk about, we're going to be getting into the 11th, 12th, 13th, the amendments coming up that really started making a difference after the Bill of Rights, getting into the Civil War and all that kind of stuff. That's coming up next Tuesday at 5:05. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and I will be putting my YouTube link on there for Shadow W Witch, and you can go back and watch the first, I think, 3 videos that cover the first 7 amendments, and I hope you find it interesting. So, and wherever you fall, one way or the other, the Constitution is our protection for all of us, and I think it's so great. It might not be most perfect, but it is the best thing that we have, at least as far as I can find in the world. And we can always get better, but we should never go back. So Thank you so much. Thanks for visiting, and I hope to see you again next time. Blessings. Bye.